For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Shannon de Rehove. I'm meeting with political analyst Aubrey Machiki, who is discussing the outcome of the ANC's Mangaung conference. Now that the Mangaung conference is behind us, were you surprised at the outcome?
I was surprised by the outcome of the presidential election. I thought the battle between the president and Deputy President Kgalema Motlanthe would be much closer, and it turned out to be quite wide. In a sense, I think some of us commentators were quite foolish in predicting a close race because every sign was there that it would be a whitewash.
You state that the conference was a bit of a damp squib. Why do you say this?
Well, to some extent, there was the expectation that there would be mayhem and that there would be blood on the floor, as some journalists and commentators put it. In relation to that, the conference was quite stable, peaceful, and uneventful, and therefore a damp squib. But it was a damp squib in another sense. The ANC went to Mangaung promising radical policy content, and that did not happen. So at a policy level, it was a damp squib too, except that I suppose those in business and the markets would look at the resolutions, particularly the economic transformation resolutions, and be happy that more or less the ANC stayed at the center. And of course, the outcome of the policy discussion is such that maybe people should not have panicked, especially in relation to policy issues such as nationalization.
You state that President Zuma will have to navigate difficult choices and balance conflicting interests now that he has been re-elected. Please elaborate on this statement.
Well, firstly, he will have to deal with the weight of expectations. He won a very strong mandate, not only with his own election as president of the ANC, but the election of the NEC itself reflected the Zuma slate, which means the Zuma camp left Mangaung with a very strong mandate. The question is whether that strong mandate is going to be turned into optimal delivery, and whether that strong mandate means the ANC will be stabilized successfully to such an extent that the stability that is achieved is felt or is translated into effective delivery by the state. That's the first thing. The second thing, the ANC went to Mangaung in the context of, I would say, more or less bad relations between the ANC government and big business. And the question is whether President Jacob Zuma and those around him will be able to cure the deficit of trust and the deficit of confidence between business and the ANC. But internally, the election of Cyril Ramaphosa is interesting because what it suggests is that the ANC intends to stay firmly at the center of the policy spectrum. But also what it does suggest is that the ANC may be more business friendly under Cyril Ramaphosa than it has been. Now, that's a good thing and a bad thing, depending on where you stand. It's a good thing to the extent that Cyril Ramaphosa, as Deputy President of the ANC now, and the future Deputy President of the country from 2014, may be able to stabilize the relationship between business and the ANC government, but also may be a much more effective communicator of economic policy to the markets and business than the ANC has been in recent times. But on the negative side, his election may lead to policy tensions within the alliance and within the ANC itself. Because if indeed the ANC is seen to be too business friendly after Mangaung, on the left, that is on the part of the SACP and COSATU, particularly COSATU, that might be read as a threat to their policy desires.
Why do you believe Kgalema Motlanthe approached the leadership race in the manner that he did?
Frankly speaking, I think that answer is firmly locked in Kgalema Motlanthe's head. But my view is that he went to Mangaung, first of all, with the hope that he would lose the presidential election, with the intention to resign or retire from politics, hence his decision not to contest the deputy presidency of the party and a post in the National Executive Committee. So it seems to me that when, with the benefit of hindsight, we look at how he ran his race, there was no race in the first instance. But more importantly, he ran that race as a candidate who was an independent. So he was an independent candidate, independent from all factions in the leadership battle. So with the benefit of hindsight, he looks like someone who had already made the decision prior to Mangaung that he intended to exit active politics. If the ANC does not succeed in persuading him to stay until 2014, he might actually exit the deputy presidency before 2014. But Motlanthe being Motlanthe, he will probably do what the ANC asks him to do.
Having come in as part of Jacob Zuma's ticket, will Cyril Ramaphosa be able to exert some authority and make changes that will improve the image of the ANC and the effectiveness of government?
Well, already he is emerging as the voice and face of the ANC, particularly of the ANC presidency. He might, after 2014, or even before, if the ANC decides otherwise, become the face of the country's presidency and the voice of the country's presidency. And he will most probably come across as the Anglophile dimension of the ANC, the modernist dimension of the ANC. But I think he's going to play a critical role as far as communicating economic policy is concerned, as far as the implementation of economic policy is concerned, but more importantly, internal communication in the ANC and in the alliance of economic policy is going to be a very important task for him. But even more importantly, if South Africa is going to succeed in growing its economy, it will have to be on the back of good relations between the state and the private sector. And I think it's going to play an important role in that regard.
Do you think Cyril Ramaphosa's election as ANC Deputy President will make the ANC a more pro-business party?
Well, at face value, that seems to be the intention of the ANC. But also, if you look at the policy content that was adopted in Mangaung, particularly the rejection of nationalization, it's very clear that as the delegation, as the conference said, that the ANC intends to maintain its position as far as its commitment to a mixed economy is concerned, which means two things. That firstly, the markets and business have a lot to be happy about the policy outcomes of the Mangaung conference. But it also means that going forward, policy predictability will be relatively high. In fact, in my view, policy predictability has been relatively high since 1996. What tends to happen, however, is that there is a lot of panic, policy uncertainty, and political uncertainty in the lead up to ANC policy and other conferences, simply because the noise that is generated prior to those conferences takes our attention away from the substance of policy. Whereas what actually happens after the noise, in terms of the substance of policy, is that the ANC always lands more or less at the center.
Do you think that Cyril Ramaphosa's election to the position of Deputy President of the ANC means that he will be the next President of South Africa?
Well, to me, it wouldn't make sense for him to accept nomination for the position of ANC Deputy President unless he has presidential ambitions, and it was on the basis that in 2017 he will be elected ANC president. But what you must bear in mind is that it is highly unlikely that the ANC has given him the guarantee that he will be elected unopposed in 2017. Remember, prior to the 2017 conference, the tenure of Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma as the head of the AU Commission will come to an end. In one scenario, she comes back to the country to contest the position of ANC president, if not that of ANC deputy president.
Do you think the ANC might be able to revitalize itself and grow its majority in the 2014 general elections?
Well, I think what the ANC needs to do is to build on the very good discussions and content of the organizational renewal document. In that document was contained a set of proposals about how to stabilize the ANC and how to improve its image and how to improve the quality of its cadres. Now, if the ANC after Mangaung is stable enough to act decisively on the content of the organizational renewal proposals, then there is always the possibility that in the lead up to the 2014 election, its image is not going to suffer in the way that it did prior to the Mangaung conference. But at the end of the day, its image might depend more on whether the perception of voters, particularly ANC voters, is whether in the past 19 years it has delivered or not on the promise of a better life for all South Africans.
Thank you for your time. That was political analyst Aubrey Machiki discussing the outcome of the ANC's Mangaung conference.